moving you to a more comfortable chair.
Okay.
Where you can talk about those things.
Oh dear. Okay.
Tony is going to make you talk about those things. So I'll allow you to sit there with your microphone.
Okay.
And then Tony is going to join you right here to probe you a little bit.
At Ubuntu, we've been talking about courage. And from the beginning of your story, you epitomize courage. I mean, the fact that you're working in this random area, who at 25 or in their 20s can think of such a place where gunshots are running? You know, nowadays the young people like to say the soft life. We like to preserve our Sundays for brunch, you know. So I don't know about, going out into those places, but it already tries or shows a significance in your purpose, your sense of purpose. Now, we get this question a lot of the time when we talk about purpose. Do you think you have gotten to the point where you know your purpose? And if you do, how did you cultivate that knowledge of this is my purpose? In other words, this is the bigger problem I'm willing to die for.
I think it's work in progress. One thing, I've always been very fortunate. I was in Sudan because I was curious. And I was lucky enough that I could find an opportunity that would kind of give me that experience. And one of the curiosities I've always had is about the United Nations. I'm curious about the United Nations. It's the only multilateral system that we have where practically all of humanity is represented in it. It was born in a specific point in time. It faces all sorts of stresses, quite frankly. I mean, there's no shortage of criticisms of what the UN has not done, what the UN should do, and so forth. But I've always been fascinated by the infrastructure of the United Nations. That sort of came from school days, from dinner conversations, that sort of thing. And going to Sudan, I think also those are the things you do when you're in your 20s. I think it's harder to do now, at least in the way that I did it then. Although in these environments is where you need, in my view, the most senior people. You should be sending more senior people to places like that. So for me, I think I'm willing to spend the rest of my time really thinking about, is this multilateral system that we have in place? How do we make it more functional? How do we ensure that there's a certain level of equity in it? Because it is so important to have a system where all nations of the world can come together to look at the bigger problems of the world. We need such a system. So for me, it is in the area of how to make this structure, how can we make this structure more functional and responsive to the problems of today?
Wow. That's quite interesting. In relation to that is the whole concept of, you have the top job in the country, the top UN job in the country. Someone out there is thinking, how did she get there? On whose shoulders did she stand on? Or was she just this brainy, amazing lady who just, cut through the corridors? What was your journey like? Because many young people here are probably thinking, how do I go back and impress my boss to make me feel like I am worth growth?
In the beginning, like everybody else, you send out thousands of applications. Then one is picked up and you start from there, so to speak. But in terms of the workplace, I think the person who seems to be willing to contribute, I think that's the person that gets noticed in the workplace. Are you contributing? Are you sharing ideas? Are you thinking about the bigger problem, the problem that seems to be the one that the team is trying to deal with? Are you coming with some ideas? Are you giving energy to that? I think those are the people who get noticed. But I don't know. I don't know if I can fully answer that question, because we also know that life is fundamentally unfair in many ways. There are many people who are absolutely brilliant, and for one reason or the other, somehow they don't get noticed. Yeah? No, we know that also happens. But generally, I believe that those who contribute, those who are trying to be helpful, those who seem to be going the extra mile, those who are sharing ideas, those people, because in all workplaces, we need problem solvers. In all workplaces, you need problem solvers. You need people who seem to be getting the job done, wanting to get the job done, thinking about the next step, etc.
All right, now let's just go to something a little bit. I'm just going to take you a little bit on this offside on this. You lead organizations or an organization that is full of diversity. And we've talked about personality, and whenever we get to the 5 a.m., we talk about personality types and how to deal with different individuals. And you've just talked about those who are quiet, but they're doing the work. Although nowadays, I had something yesterday that made me laugh. It said, if you show up to work and you are not fired up, you will. If you're not enthusiastic enough to be fired up, you'll be fired enthusiastically. And it made me think, and I thought, maybe that's my personality, not to be fired up. How do you deal with the different personalities in your organization? Because we all have different personalities.
I'm relatively quiet. In fact, I remember when this is middle management now, and I moved to New York, my then boss pulled me aside and said, Susan, we know that you don't talk a lot. This is New York. We expect to hear your voice in every meeting. We expect you to talk. I think you can still contribute significantly and show your contributions regardless of what personality you are. Whether you're an introverted, you're extroverted, you're somewhere in the middle, I think you can figure out ways of still showing the contributions that you're making. In terms of managing these different types, you gain some experience as a manager at some point. So now, I know the quiet ones, I call them. I expressly make sure that I hear what they have to say. I make it my business to cultivate an office environment where I hope it is not too costly in terms of energy for people to share their ideas. I try to make it a safe enough environment where people feel they can share their ideas. But I think that comes with experience when you try to, because in this business of not one person knows the answer, I know that brilliant little pieces are hiding everywhere in that office and outside. So then part of it is, okay, how do you structure it in such a way that you see some of those pieces and you learn of the ideas that are sitting in colleagues?
Pretty much like putting a Lego together, picking up the pieces that have been thrown about. That's quite interesting. It really also goes back, I think, to communication, how you communicate with your team. I was learning of a concept called HAIL, or a concept called HAIL. Honesty for the H, authenticity for the A, integrity for the I, and of course, love. And you talked about love, being the loving person. As a leader, when you are that kind of person, I think people are willing to listen to you, but also you amplify, like you've just called it, the safe space. I love to call it the trust zone, And trust is not something easy to come by. You build it over time. If you were working with a young guy, and there are many young people here, and say the trust was erased one day, but you're the leader, how would you react to that, or how would you help that person rebuild that trust?
I think you talk to the person. Now, it depends at what level trust was broken. If it was a criminal activity, well, there's also such a thing as consequence. There are always consequences in life. You do certain things, there's certain consequences. So sometimes the consequence might be such that I cannot shield that person from it. Yeah. But my belief is you never condemn the individual, the human being. You condemn the actions. And if that actions, if they're prescribed ways of dealing with that action, fine, it will be dealt with. But you don't condemn the human being. And especially when we are young, we're still trying to figure it out. There are many mistakes. You've had some life experience under your belt. You can navigate some things better than you could when you're earlier. So in such a situation, if I'm the elder one, you pull them aside, you pull their ears a little bit. you try to make sure that you coach them so that they're aware of what happened and what they shouldn't do next time around.
Thank you very much, Susan. That's been really amazing. Thank you so much, guys. It's really, really been amazing. And Susan, when I went to visit Susan to ask or request her to come over, I'm glad she did not say no, which means this is part of her bigger problem. So I think that for me is a good sign. But I want us to use the next moments to really just network and also send Susan off and to really thank you. Thank you in our gratitude way, saying, Asante Sana, you have really done us a great favor. I mean, the conversation has been really great. We've really had a great evening. I mean, who can doubt this? If anyone can doubt this, can you put up your hand? Okay, who agrees to this? So thank you so much, Susan. It's really been a pleasure. And we hope that you can now come back again to Ubuntu, not as a speaker, but as a mentor to some of the great people who are here.